I've just got 5 key, I think, ingredients to HSC assessment task success. And I know at a time like this, there can be a lot of stress and emotions flying around. So I think it's just really helpful to think about, what's actually the point of this exam that I'm doing. And I once heard someone describe it to me as an exam being like a conversation. It's a conversation between you and the marker. You're telling them what you do know and what you don't know. And the beauty of an assessment task is that you're still in school. And what you don't know, you can begin to look at your weaknesses and what you need practice on and actually target those areas. You have the opportunity because your marker is your teacher. And you guys can look at that together and really focus on the things that you might not be so sure on or where your foundation is a bit weaker, and you still have time between now and the final HSC exams. So I think that's the real beauty of the time that we have now and an assessment task that we do in school. So let's jump into it. 5 key ingredients. The first thing is this guy here, our formula sheet. So with an HSC assessment task, there's only going to be several topics tested. And so for example, my year 12s coming up, they're being tested on area and volume, statistical distributions, the sine and cosine rule, and probability. And so I've just gone through this formula sheet and I've literally just highlighted all the formulas they're going to need in this exam. So for example, when is something an outlier, the normal distribution percentages, or area and volume. There's a lot of different formulas there. Literally this whole page is full of area and volume formulas, and over the page there's trig ratios and a little bit of probability there. What's the point of that? Well, first of all, it gives me an idea of where things are on the formula sheet, right? The last thing you want to do when you're in an exam is trying to look for that one thing you know is definitely there, but you actually just can't find it. So it gives you an idea of the locations of where things are on your formula sheet, which could save you a bit of time in a stressful exam condition. The next thing is, it actually gives you an idea of what's on the formula sheet. There are some things that I wouldn't have expected to be here before I first saw it. For example, the radius of the Earth, that's actually given to you. And I think they actually asked a past HSC question on that. So if you didn't know the radius of the Earth was actually given to you in the formula sheet, you'd probably be racking your brain over, man, how am I supposed to calculate this? Am I making the problem more complicated? Or you might have just moved on. But a lot of the stuff that you need is actually on this sheet. So just passing through it and highlighting what's going to be in your exam, that's just really helpful. Okay. And the next thing you want to do is you want to pass through all your content and get an overview of the topics that are going to be in your exam. What does that look like? Well, at the end of each chapter, you've got these kind of revision sections in your textbook, and those are a really good place to start. Going through each of the revision chapters from your textbook and having a look at those questions. What does that achieve? Well, that's going to bring me to my next 2 points. And that's looking at the familiarity of the question and what kind of questions they actually ask you, right? You'll notice as you go through all the revision chapters that each topic asks questions in a slightly different way, or they're geared towards different things, right? For example, volume and area, it's very formula based, right? There's a whole page of formulas for volume and area. And those questions are going to be about looking at the shapes of solids that are given in the question and choosing which equation you're actually going to need to use. But then we get to something like statistical distributions, and there's a very big focus on definitions and recognizing, for example, what is a positive or negative skew, okay, which way is it? And or looking at things like outliers, when can we determine that something is an outlier? Or finding the interquartile range, right? We need to be familiar with those types of definitions before we can even start to answer the question. And what are the other topics? Sine and cosine rule. Again, another pretty formula-based topic. It's about looking at the triangle, looking at the information you're given, determining whether you need the sine and cosine rule. And on the last one, probability, which I think a lot of people find more difficult, because with probability we actually have to think a bit more. Before we dive into the question, we need to look at whether this is going to be, for example, an ordered selection, or a selection where order doesn't actually matter. So passing through all your content and looking at those revision questions gives you an idea of what the question's actually going to be like, with the goal of when you flip open that exam for the first time and you start looking at the questions, you can say, oh, I've actually seen this question before and I know this is the way you need to approach it. Or at the very least, you can recognize which topic it's actually from and think about what tools you have at your disposal to start answering a question from that topic. Okay, so there's a lot of different benefits from simply just looking at the types of questions that they're going to ask you. And the next thing that actually helps us do, the next ingredient, is that by passing through all the content, our brain likes to make these connections and we actually see where we have weaknesses. Okay, we can start focusing on things we actually need to do. For example, this textbook is really good because, for example, if I look at this question here, it says find the size of this obtuse angle in the triangle. And if I think, oh man, I have no idea how to do that question, you can actually look at what exercise that's from. This one's from 505. So I can just go ahead and I flip to 505. And I realize it's a sine rule question to find the unknown angle, right? And so I can start working through the exercises now that I know that I have weaknesses in this area. Instead of just thinking, oh, I'm really far behind on everything, let's just try and smash through all the exercises between now and my exam. Well, you've also got limited time and you want to really work smarter in that regard, not necessarily harder. You want to be efficient with the time that you have and that you can use to actually revise. And that's the fourth ingredient. The last one is, once you realize that, don't run away from your mistakes. Don't run away from the areas where we're weak. I remember when I always used to get an exam back at the end of a year, and I would look through the things that I did really well and be really happy, and those things that I didn't do so well in, I would just kind of hide away. That's probably the complete opposite thing that I should have done. I should have looked at the things that I got wrong in detail and tried to focus on how I could actually improve on them and really address why I got them wrong, or why did I do it this way and not the correct way. And only then can we start to understand how to do better at those certain topics. So what's going to be your friend in this regard? Well, things like this, things that have work solutions. And there's a lot of different resources you can use. The Board of Studies has a lot of stuff, HSC Ninja, and I'm sure there's a lot of different stuff online. When you look at a question, when you get stuck, you don't want to be trying to think about it for too long, because again, you're studying for something with a limited time frame. You want something on hand where you can look at the work solutions and see step by step how they actually worked out the answer. Once you've done that, once you've built up that confidence, you want to try similar questions of that style without the work solutions now, and just having a go at yourself. And when you get stuck, you can refer back to it and see which step doesn't make sense to you. Okay, so that's just 5 quick ingredients, what I think really push towards HSC assessment type success. Yeah, good luck.